if reposted.
Today we're joined by a Guinness World Record holder, New York Times best-selling author, and back-to-back winner of the Toyota Pro and Celebrity Race, Adam Carolla. In addition to hosting multiple podcasts, including his flagship Adam Carolla Show, he has directed multiple films. Currently, one of his docs, Shelby American, is streaming now on Netflix. You can check out all of his films at chassis, CHASSY.com. Thank you so much for joining us, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I want to start off with a quote I got from you and see how it wraps into sports. You said, "That's the thing I love about sports. Sports forces you to quit. You can't pursue your dreams till you're 46. When it comes to acting, writing, comedy, nobody ever stops you." I mean, growing up a Rams fan, I mean, you wish you could have seen Eric Dickerson play longer than see maybe Brad Pitt in movies?
Yeah, or maybe Jerome Bettis for that matter.
Yeah.
At least as a Ram, right?
Yeah. So in the LA sports scene, late 60s and 70s, when you're growing up, you got the Dodgers, of course. Tommy Lasorda's coming on the scene. The Lakers have always been good. Showtime starts going. And then there's the Rams. What connects you to the Rams fan? You were just a football fan?
I loved football. I love football more than anything from, maybe the time I was 6 or 7 to the time I couldn't play anymore when I was about 19 or 20. So I didn't have a great childhood. I loved playing Pop Warner football. I was good at it. I got to be the only person I know that played 7 years of Pee Wee football before I got to high school. So I was a football fanatic, and so of course the Rams were the team in Los Angeles, and that's where I was born. So it made perfect sense.
So I guess growing up playing football, I mean, you're in it. Is it you're studying the NFL and you're like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and you're mimicking it, or is it? Were you drawn to any other teams like the Lakers or the Dodgers?
I would root for the Dodgers. I would root for the Lakers. I would root for the Kings. Whoever. I was always like the LA teams to win. I wasn't a sports guy in the sense that I collected baseball cards or took stats or read books. I wasn't really much into the sort of nerd part of it. I just wanted to play football. So for me, I just wasn't into the banners or the hats or the jersey, memorabilia, any of the statistics. I wasn't into any of that stuff. I just wanted to play.
So the story goes that even though you played Pop Warner for 7 years, you hit puberty late. You're not really that good to begin with on your high school team. And then you work really hard, you eat a lot of eggs, and you say you become really good. Has that sort of served for your sort of platform in the entertainment business? The harder you work, the better you might become at this?
Yeah, I got when I got to high school in the 10th grade, I sat on the bench for the B team, and they wanted me to play on the B team, basically the junior varsity or whatever the next year. And I said, nah, I'm going to eat a bunch of eggs and lift a bunch of weights and get myself, see if I can make the varsity team, even though I'll probably sit on the bench for another year. So I did, and a guy got hurt in front of me, and I ended up starting on the varsity the next year. And then the year after that, I was all Valley on offense, and I got best defensive player on defense. So I ended up having a pretty good high school career. And I got recruited to smaller colleges, Cal Poly Pomona, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and UC Davis, and Marshall was probably the only school that had much of a program. Although they didn't have much of a program back then. And I had bad grades, and I got bad parents. So I never went anywhere, and I started working construction.
So, I mean, I guess you said you had this relationship with football, you played it, and then you watched it. Well, when you go into construction and you're working in your early 20s before you start working in entertainment, do you still keep track of football? Like, did that change your fan status of following teams?
Yeah, I had withdrawals from playing football for a good 5 years after I stopped playing football. And yeah, I always rooted for the Rams, and I always watched Sunday football. I still watch Sunday football. Football's my favorite sport. There's nothing better than getting the guys together on a Sunday and getting some beers and getting the NFL package and that whole 9 yards. So yeah, I was always a fan, and at that point, it was time to stop playing and just start cheering on the Rams.
I can't imagine being in LA rooting for the Rams in the late 70s because, for God's sakes, Hunter was on the team. Fred Dreyer. Did you instantly start watching the TV show because you were a Rams fan?
I love Freddie Dreyer. He's a good dude, too. I've interviewed him before. And, you can't go wrong with Jack Youngblood and the fact that also a guy named Jim Youngblood, and two guys named Youngblood, and they couldn't even put Jay Youngblood on their jersey because it still wouldn't have defined them enough because it was Jack and Jim. So I think Jack just had Jack above Youngblood. It'd be interesting. I don't think, I can't picture it, but you guys tell me. Has there ever been another case where a guy's first name was written out in full above his last name on the back of his jersey?
Does he hate me count?
Yeah, I was thinking of him, but nah, it's got to be your Christian name. I'm pretty sure Jack Youngblood had Jack written above Youngblood on the back of his jersey. Yeah, I love those. Those guys were great. I mean, at this point, for me, we're out of the late 70s and we're into the kind of mid 80s at this point for following my chronology. But yeah, I do remember all those names.
You mentioned you're later in your career, you start interviewing these people you watched growing up. Does that affect? I mean, you weren't really following the statistics of these players, but like going from a fan watching people thinking they're inaccessible, and then all of a sudden you're sitting down with these legends. Does that change your view of the sport once they become more humanized?
No, I mean it's a good question, but it didn't really have any effect on me. I thought it was kind of cool to get to talk to people who I remember from back in the day, and I had information on them. Like I remember their playing days. I remember how they wore their uniforms. I remember whether they wore the neck roll toilet seat or not. I remember all their face masks. I kind of remember back when you used to really you could see a guy. Kenny Stabler wore his uniform much different than Archie Manning did. Back in the day, face masks and everything else. But no, I was just excited to have a chance to interview him and speak to him.
I feel like you're an amateur philosopher, Adam. What do you think of sports, rooting for teams, fanatics? Is it good for society, or do we have our priorities mixed up?
I think it's good to have a distraction. I don't think it's good to have an obsession. I feel like your family should be your team, or your business. That should be your team. And you should sort of root the hardest and work the hardest for them. And then there's the distraction. It's sort of like if you want to go see the Grateful Dead when they come to town, fine. If you want to quit your job, buy a minivan and follow them around the country, then I don't support that.
I guess to bring things full circle, you attribute a lot of your work ethic to football. You have kids now. There's been a lot of talk of like the NFL is going away from it used to be. Do you do you see the future of kids playing football or going to another sport to try to instill that amount of discipline?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an issue because nobody in my kids' circle of friends plays tackle football. Almost none. They're 14 now. None of them played. Almost none of them played tackle, and I think it's going to cause damage to them. Everyone's always worried about the damage, the physical damage that they could receive playing tackle football. But what about all the positive stuff that they're not going to get, which, in my opinion, outweighs any physical damage? Plus, like my son, he was playing flag football when he was, I don't know, 11. The stupid coach was out on the field, like in the huddle, calling the plays with his clipboard. Like, I played Pop Warner football. There was no coach on the field. You'd have to run in your plays with a guard or signal the plays in or whatever. Like, it was so much more advanced. They dumbed it down. Why would you're playing like, I don't know, 7 or 8 man flag football. Why is the coach standing in the middle of the field?
You know, the show's about fandom, becoming a fan. You grew up in LA, you played football, you like the Rams, you're a fan. But flipping that around, what do you think about people being a fan of you? Is that just the sort of the result of making stuff and then having people watch and that's normal? Or do you think it's odd because the team that some people are rooting for is you?
Yeah, I really don't think about it. It's not necessarily because I'm modest. It seems so distant. You know, if I ever hear anybody who is a fan, I'm always somewhat surprised because I'm still, you know, in my heart, just kind of like poor kid from the valley. So I appreciate it. I'm flattered by it. I do love it when people buy my books and read my books. I love it when people watch my documentaries and listen to my podcasts and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I love a good compliment as much as the next guy, but I really, in a way, it's like I don't quite know how to digest it.
Hey, before we
Luckily, it doesn't come up that often. I'm sorry.
Before we let you go, Adam, we went down the rabbit hole for this interview in North Hollywood High School where you starred in football, and there are so many unbelievable people that you could have been in class with. Let's start with this one. Did you know Benny Rodriguez, the famous kickboxer, martial arts choreographer?
Oh, Benny the Jet. No, that's Benny Urquidez.
Urquidez, yes, the Jet.
Oh, yeah, I thought you said Rodriguez. Sorry. Now, Benny the Jet Urquidez is probably a little older than me.
Okay. Well, let's try this one. Did you know Cuba Gooding Jr.?
No, Cuba Gooding Jr. is younger than me. I think I missed these guys.
Okay, let's keep going. Scott Yancey, Flipping Vegas. He's right there, right?
I still don't know who that is, but how old is he?
Okay, let's keep going. This one's got to be in your wheelhouse. Deborah White was the actor who played the limousine driver Argyle in Die Hard.
Oh, yeah, I remember her well. I remember explaining to her that she was destined to be in a big Bruce Willis movie, but I know not which one.
Yeah, well, we know for sure you knew Molly Ringwald's sister, but Adam Carolla, thank you so much for joining us today. Check him out at adamcarolla.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Adam Carolla. Thank you so much for taking some time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Adam.